Hi, I'm Josh.
And I'm Scott.
Today, we're going to be showing you how to build your basic PC system and go over the various components inside of the PC.
You will need a motherboard, a computer case, a CPU, a graphics card, RAM, an anti-static wristband and mat, a screwdriver, thermal paste and a heatsink, a power supply, a hard drive, and a CD drive, which is optional.
Alright, so before we want to get started with actually putting the components in, what we want to do first is make sure we have all of the required components, as well as have our anti-static mats to put them on to shield it against static electricity discharges, and to discharge the static electricity from your body via anti-static wrist strap. And what that does is you just connect to the computer, and that will prevent you from damaging any components with electricity. Okay, so now that we have all the parts out, we have everything grounded to prevent any accidents. The first thing that we want to do, in my opinion, is to install the CPU, which stands for Central Processing Unit. It's essentially the brains of the entire computer. It's where all the data goes to be processed. So I'm going to go ahead and install that real quick. And what you want to do is match up the design, the pattern of the pins on each of the components here. And once they're matched up, you can just drop them down. And then after that, there is a little lever here that will lock the CPU in place. All you want to do is push down and clip it under there, and the CPU is now in place.
Before we install the motherboard into the case of the computer, we need to install the RAM into the motherboard, and RAM stands for random access memory and allows programs to temporarily store data in the chip of RAM. So yeah, let's go and install that, and to do this you simply match up the pins of both connectors of the motherboard and the chip of RAM and simply press it in, and you'll hear a click when it's done.
After we've installed our RAM and CPU into the motherboard of our computer, the next step we can take is to actually install the motherboard into the PC system itself. So the first thing you want to do is make sure that everything is facing the proper direction. Make sure you're grounded, of course, and just kind of take the motherboard like this and place it gently onto these areas for the screws. Now, the goal in all this is to make sure that all the ports on the side here are matched up properly, so you can get your audio output, your USB output, everything matches up correctly. The other thing you want to do is actually line up these holes here on top of these areas for the screws, and after you've done that, you also want to take your screws from the motherboard and, of course, screw it in.
Alright, so now that we have the motherboard inside the case, we want to go along and install the GPU. And a GPU is a graphical processing unit, and to install it, you basically just want to find the bottom connectors on the GPU, look at how they're lined, and align them up with the connectors on the motherboard in the PCI Express slot right here. Alright, and once you have them aligned, just press down. Alright, so now that we have our GPU installed, we want to go along and install our CD drive and also our hard drive. Alright, so instead of installing the CD drive through the inside of the computer, we're going to be taking it and installing it from the outside. So we're going to put it through the front panel, just like this, and you just slide it in place. Alright, and now lock it in place. Alright, now that we have the CD drive in place, we want to go along and install the hard drive. To do this, you just want to make sure the hard drive is facing the right direction with the motherboard to the bottom and the ports to the motherboard of the computer. Alright, and we're just going to slide it into this slot right here. Alright, and once we have it in, we just need to go along and lock it back in place, and we should be good on the hard drive. Alright, so the next step we need to do is install the SATA cables, and they will connect the devices that we just installed to the motherboard so that our computer can access the information from these devices.
So the next step after we've installed our optical drives and our graphics card and our motherboard and all the components, we're going to want to install the device that actually gives it all power, which is the power supply. So what we have here is your basic modular power supply. So what you want to do is put it in the opening towards the upper part of the case, and just slide it. It should slide right in to the specified spot. And on this side, although you probably can't see it from here, there are spots for the screws where you're going to screw it in on the back if you choose to do so. So the next part that we're going to do is hook up all of the power that will power the components of the CPU, the motherboard, the graphics card, everything. And after you've done that, just double check, make sure that everything is connected. After that, you want to do your front panel. Alright, so after we've installed the power for the components of the PC, we also want to hook up the things like the audio, the USB, and the front panel connector. Now, the front panel connector is different for every motherboard. The instruction manual will actually have the directions how to plug them in, but this one displays what you have to do on the motherboard itself. So, we are going to want to connect these cables here at the bottom. And now we take our audio connector and simply plug it into the green connector area right over here. And you'll feel a little bit of a click, and it's in. So now everything's installed properly, so we can use the power button, the USB ports, and the input and output for the microphone and headphone jacks in the front of the computer.
Lastly, we're going to be installing the heat sink of the computer, but before we do that, we need to apply thermal paste. And to do this, you need thermal paste, of course, and you want to apply as much as the cap of the thermal paste. So it will look like a little dot on top of the CPU. Just do it in the center of the CPU. Again, fill as much as that cap held. So that's a good amount for this. Alright, and then you're going to get your heatsink. For us, we have a liquid cooler. So it's going to be a little different if you don't have liquid cooling. Actually, it'll be a little bit easier for you, as you'll probably just have to pin in it. Alright, so for this we're going to simply match up these, and you'll have like little pins right here that will hold on to these brackets. So you grab that bracket, and there's another bracket on the other side, and you want to make sure that these pins actually get a hold of them. So I'll do that right now. Alright, so now that the heat sink's in place, we need to install the fan onto the case. Alright, so it's pretty simple. All you need to do is first connect the bottom to that. You'll hear a click, and connect the top, and you'll also hear a click. So lastly, we need to find the 3-pin fan connector, and for us it's actually under the fan, which is a little bit difficult to get to, but oh well. So I'll go and install that now. Alright, and you have successfully built your PC, so all you need to do now is put on the back of the case and plug in the computer, and it'll work perfectly fine.
Alright, so now that we've actually finished putting our computer together, that's pretty much it for our presentation. Everything was installed correctly. We did the motherboard, the CPU, the processor, all the cables, the optical drives, as well as the coolant, the fan for the CPU.
I'm Scott, and this is Joss, and we out.
Yep.